Good day, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I hope y'all are having an amazing day. My name is Justice, and here on this channel, we talk about and review new games, but also we talk about fresh new games coming and news, making sure that you are always updated on the games you're most interested in. And today, I specifically wanted to go over some Marvel Rivals news, in specific, an article that was posted a little earlier today by PC Gamer. But first, let's go a little bit over and into detail on what exactly Marvel Rivals is as a game. What is Marvel Rivals? It is a new third-person 6v6 hero shooter. It is made by NetEasy Games, and it is developed in Unreal Engine 5. It is highlighting a large cast of playable characters from the comics, a lot of villains as well, including heroes and villains like Magneto, Hulk, you have Iron Man, Groot, and many more. It is available on all new-gen consoles, so that would be the Xbox Series X and S, the PlayStation 5, and Steam. And it is speculated to be releasing for everyone free-to-play in the first or second quarter of 2025. We don't technically have a release date yet, but based off of the time that we had the alpha and the first closed beta, we can probably expect it to arrive sometime in the first, second quarter of next year. Alpha started back in May of this year. It had 30,000 players. You could apply ahead of time, and you could be one of the lucky few that they picked. There were a lot of people that I knew that applied to get in. It has been called out and drawn some criticism for being pretty similar to Overwatch. And a similar style to Activision's Juggernaut. It is a hero shooter. You do work together as a team in objective-based rounds. But you even have popular YouTubers and streamers like Penguin Zero. They titled their videos, "Let's see Marvel's Overwatch. Is it any good?" So that kind of tells you the ideas of how this game is being perceived already. It's being perceived as Marvel's Overwatch, but in third person. That's kind of how a lot of people are thinking of it. Back when the alpha ended, the issues that a lot of people brought up were performance issues, stating that some PCs especially had a harder time running it. Some unoriginality within the main attacks. I saw it stated quite a few times on the Reddit page for the game that a lot of players feel like the main attacks feel super similar to all the different characters, kind of to like Zenyatta's main attack in Overwatch, how it's kind of slow and you can kind of see everyone's individual projectiles. So that was one thing. And then also balancing issues, especially for some of the tank characters and specifically Hulk. And I think that this was probably the biggest issue that I saw that players brought up, because balance issues, especially with a game like this that has so many of these characters that people have grown to love over the years, whether it's from the comics or the shows or the movies, and there's specific characters that they've grown very attached to. Like, I really like Captain America, but I know a lot of people really like Iron Man and some Hulk. And when a game like this that is kind of built around playing a specific hero, when that hero doesn't feel balanced, and you end up having to play other heroes when you really just want to play that main one, kind of like a Hulk, it takes away, I think, from a lot of the fun for a lot of people. But I think that kind of on the higher side, a lot of the damage dealing characters felt very good. The movement was very fun. When the performance was good, I think a lot of players felt like it ran very smoothly. I know that a couple of the other pros that were brought up were it's very fast paced. The characters were very fun to play. I think one thing that I've definitely noticed, and what I've played, but also in seeing what other people have played, is the characters all feel very different with how they play, which is something that I think you have to nail within these, especially the 5v5 or the 6v6 hero shooter genre, is because it's already such a highly saturated market that your game has to feel very unique, but then each one of those players, I think, has to also feel unique in conjunction with that. And so the alpha kind of closed up, and a lot of people are very excited. Like I said, it's had quite a bit of hype behind it, just because of Marvel and it being a hero shooter, even though I feel like a lot of people have gotten a little bit tired of the hero shooter genre. I think that they're still excited, I think specifically for a hero shooter within Marvel characters. I think it's a really fun idea, and I think something that should have been done earlier. And if it would have been done a little earlier, probably wouldn't be as highly compared to Overwatch as it is now. The beta is actually going on at the moment. It is a closed beta, so you did have to sign up. It started on July 23rd, and it is running through August 5th, so that is a total of 10 days. It's no longer open for signups, to the best of my knowledge. I couldn't see anywhere on the research that I did that you could still sign up to get into it, but I know that it has a lot of players that are playing it, and a lot of streamers, and so there's a lot of new ideas and a lot of new opinions that are coming in. They did introduce 2 new characters for people to try as well, to, I think, get people even more excited. Add a Warlock, which is more of a healer, and then Venom, which is damage, a DPS character. And it seems like that really also brought in more hype, especially for Venom. A lot of people are really excited by the way he plays, as he has the ability to swing around with a web as well, but it's an ability, so not the same as the way that Spider-Man works with the game, but kind of similar. Still very fun movement. One thing that I definitely am a little bit surprised with is that they didn't release like a Wolverine character to go along with the movie that's coming out. As we know, because of data miners, that it has been leaked that is a character that is planned to come in the future as well. So that did surprise me a little bit, but we will be getting Wolverine presumably sometime in the future. The first impression from the players that I think I'm kind of seeing the most is it's more balanced, that the characters are more enjoyable to play, that the tanks especially feel a little bit better, and a little bit more like they pack a punch. I think that was the biggest issue with Hulk, is that he's this big guy and his punches, they didn't really do much damage, but then you'd have like the bullets from Punisher's weapon that seemed to do more damage a lot quicker, and it just didn't really make as much sense. It's another thing that I've seen a lot of players say is it's very hectic. There are a lot of particle effects. There's a lot of effects on screen, a lot of movement. This is a much higher movement game than Overwatch is, and a lot more aerial. A lot more characters are aerial, moving through the air, and it has destructible environments, which is one thing that separates it from a game like Overwatch, which doesn't have as many. It has some, but not nearly to the same extent as this game. But because of those destructible environments, it also makes it very difficult sometimes to kind of see around and kind of get your bearings when the fights are really intense. But on the kind of all-around feeling is that the game's very fun, that it, I think especially with the third-person view, it feels different than Overwatch just because of that. I think if this was first-person, I think it would have a lot more issues, and I'm glad they didn't make it first-person. And a lot of people really like the art style. It's kind of a mix of a lot of what we've seen in the more popular culture within the movies and the TV shows, and then kind of a mix of some of the older comic book suits and characters. And I know they plan to bring in a lot of those older suits and a lot of those older kind of nostalgic feeling cosmetics for players to buy. This is a live service game, so presumably it will have a battle pass and it will have skins to buy afterwards. I haven't heard that any of the characters will be locked behind a paywall, but that could be a possibility in the future, so just keep that in mind. But to the best of my knowledge, so far, that has been something that they have kept as free for all players to start out. My first impressions, I wasn't able to play the alpha, sadly, but I was able to get into the closed beta. And my first impressions are it's better in the balance side than what I was expecting. But also, I think each character feeling so different makes the game very enjoyable. You feel like you're actually playing the heroes themselves. And the game does something really interesting, and it has synergies. As an example, and this is one of the more popular ones, Spider-Man and Venom, if you play them in the same match and you're on the same team, Venom will actually, or Spider-Man will actually get a symbiote on him that will you'll be able to activate for an extra ability during the game. And so there's a lot of really interesting synergies like that, and there's a lot of them. Some of them only include 2 people, some of them include an entire team of people. So it really makes it feel like you are playing the heroes, and that the heroes also work together, similar as they would in a movie or in a comic book that we've seen in the past. I do think that I don't know if there's any way for them to pull back on the particle effects, but it is a little bit intense. And since it is 6v6, adding in those 2 extra players that we don't have in Overwatch, since that is 5v5, it also makes it a little bit more hectic because of that as well. Makes it a lot more enjoyable for some people because you can have an extra person, an extra healer, an extra tank. So some of the rounds last a little bit longer. One thing I also really enjoy about it is that it's very quick. The matches, you get into these matches right away. I think mostly because there's so many people that are playing it right now. But you get into the matches very quickly. The load screens are very fast, and then the time from when you spawn to when you get to action is very quick. And if you play certain quickers, similar to Overwatch, but I would say much quicker than that even, is you can get to the action a lot faster from the time that you respawn, which I think makes it a little bit more enjoyable and makes it doesn't feel like you're just kind of sitting there waiting to get back into action for as long, especially when you play some characters like a Hulk, some of the characters that don't move as quickly. It makes it feel a lot better when those characters can get into the action a little bit faster than tanks in some other games. So those are some things that I really enjoyed about it. My favorite character that I played was Venom. After I finished playing some, I looked online and I saw that PC Gamer had released a review of their time that they had spent playing it. And as a person who looks at reviews and was very interested to kind of see what they said, it started off being very, very interesting, let's just say. And so I really wanted to kind of go over it and kind of bring up my thoughts and what I see from what the person said, and kind of give you my thoughts as well as someone who has also played it and might not be as cynical. Article starts off by saying, Marvel Rivals, closed beta is aggressively bad and turns my favorite Marvel villain into a glorified babysitter. First off, I think the fact that you are singling out that this review is because of one character already speaks a lot to it. I knew something was terribly wrong 10 seconds into Marvel Rivals tutorial. Actually, not just something, everything. The fact that the map looked like a soulless face smile of an Overwatch location, all brightly colored but entirely forgettable, and worst of all, the combat itself, which is so unpleasant that it took all my willpower not to quit there and then. One thing I will say is that all the maps are very bright and very colorful, which I really enjoy. He calls them forgettable. I think that every map is somewhat forgettable until you play it more and you learn it and you grow to have an attachment to that map, and that's when it doesn't become forgettable anymore. My enthusiasm for the hero shooters allowed me to overlook a lot of flaws. I even enjoyed a stint in Star Wars Hunters, free-to-play junk food, but fun nevertheless, and I wanted to like Marvel Rivals. The MCU has done a fantastic job of sapping my interest in comic adaptations. Tutorials are rarely a good time, of course, so I gave the game the benefit of the doubt and hopped into my first match. That's usually a pretty good idea. Tutorials are never a good idea of a game, so the fact that he had to say that and he was already basing his opinion off of the game off of a very small tutorial, I think says a lot as well. My hopes were then buoyed by the presence of Magneto in the roster. Magneto is not just Marvel's greatest antagonist, he is the best comic book villain and sometimes hero. One thing I think I will say that this article is very, very subjective. Everything he is saying is very subjective, just by that statement in and of itself, that Magneto is the greatest comic book villain. Sure, he'll have some people agree with him, but he'll have a lot of people that disagree with him as well. So the people that disagree with him automatically probably have a very different view on this entire article that he's written. Unfortunately, Marvel Rivals, the man who reversed Earth's magnetic poles, took out entire cities, and regularly defeats teams of superheroes single-handedly, is reduced to the role of a shield guy. He's a pound shop Reinhardt from Overwatch. If you don't know, Reinhardt from Overwatch is a big, bulky guy with an axe and a shield that he can use. This guy is saying he likes Reinhardt, so this isn't necessarily a terrible thing. Unfortunately, his suite of abilities are, like everyone else's, horrible to use. So he's making it very general as well. He's saying everyone's abilities are terrible, which I think is just completely false. But I also think that it's not right to say that he's been reduced to the role of a shield guy. All these characters have been reduced to some extent down very, very far. Storm is, in the comics, a class 5 mutant who is extremely powerful. Hulk, honestly, really none of these characters would have a chance against Hulk, so they have to dumb them down some. And they have to reduce them to certain roles, and Magneto was reduced to a tank role. Within that tank role, he does have a shield, and so that is part of his role. Magneto's big shields last mere seconds, making it a brief situational save rather than something a team can build a strategy around. He can also protect allies with magnetic bubbles, but they are also incredibly short-lived. This means you're constantly running around trying to protect everyone while your team jumps around, flies off, or gets lost in the mess of obfuscating abilities. It's a bloody nightmare. He uses some very large words. Does not make it easy to read this. I think that this isn't fair at all, because I don't think that this is a game like Overwatch. Overwatch, like I said, Overwatch is more of a tight-knit teamwork game. So, like Reinhardt within the game, which he is comparing him to, has a very large shield that he can hold out until it breaks. So oftentimes, if you're his teammates, you'll get behind the shield because you can shoot through it, but the enemies can't shoot you. And so it often leads to some compact moments. This is a game that has a lot of movement, and because of all of the movement and the effects, the visual effects, everything like that, grouping up close together is not something you want to do. You often are wanting to try to spread out. And so I think that Magneto's shield has a lot more uses within the actual objectives of pushing the payload, of helping your teammates out for short periods. And I think the magnetic bubbles do the exact same thing. And his job is not to heal everyone. His job is to be a tank, and he has more health. And that's kind of just who he is. I think that so far what I'm seeing is that this person's just very mad that their favorite character has gotten reduced to a tank character. They wanted them to be a more of a damage character, which I just don't think is fair to judge an entire game based off of your disappointment that your favorite character wasn't made the way that you wanted him to be. I don't exactly know what you want. That's totally fine. And I think that as I said, I think that the argument that he's so powerful, but now he's not, is just not fair at all, because all of these characters are insanely powerful, and all are getting reduced down. As I floated across the map like a sleepy tank, I wondered, is this what the Master of Magnetism has been reduced to? Well, he is a tank, so yes. A support role with no bite. Magneto can do a lot of damage as well. And I don't think that that's completely fair. I don't think that he played enough games with Magneto. A support role with no bite, chasing down unworthy allies in an attempt to save them from their own recklessness. An Omega-level mutant turned into a sad nanny. Even though Marvel Rivals matches are short, my stint with Magneto was more than enough time for my love for the character to sour. If this were a single-player game where you had to play as Magneto, and that was the role that you were playing, and he had been reduced to this, I could understand that, but that's not the type of game that we're playing. His primary attack, meanwhile, sees him shoot out little purple projectiles, and thanks to Marvel Rivals' lack of feedback and every attack's complete absence of weight or momentum, feels entirely impotent. Even his ultimate, where he launches a metal meteor at a specific area, feels wimpy. It can wipe out multiple heroes, so this isn't a complaint about its actual damage capabilities, rather it's an issue of presentation, where every match looks like a cluttered light show. So basically, he's just mad. He's just mad about everything that is being presented to him within Magneto. I do think that some of that is a fine criticism of the game, though. I think that sometimes the attacks, even within Hulk, as I was saying before, he has this big guy, and sometimes his attacks feel really wimpy, but he has these big arms that are hitting people. So I think that the lack of feedback and the feeling of oomph that you get with hitting people, I do think that that is something that they can work on, and should work on before they release it. And also visual feedbacks for when you hit people, when you're getting damaged, all those things need to be a little bit simpler and easier to see because of all of the sounds, all of the visual effects, the breaking environments. Those are two things that you need to be able to know at any given time when you're in the quick minute-to-minute moments of combat. He says his secondary attack scores a point because there's a good idea underpinning it. It can be quickly charged up by shielding allies, encouraging players to support their team so they can unleash a more powerful attack. But there's no joy to be found in hitting targets with it. This really encapsulates the Marvel Rivals experience, even when it reveals a neat idea, like certain heroes being able to team up, so Scarlet Witch can bestow Magneto with a sword infused with chaos energy. The foundations are just so weak, the combat so unappealing, that it's entirely undermined. I have a feeling he didn't play any of the other characters, and Magneto just really didn't work for him. Because, as I said before, the team up and the synergy abilities have a pretty big effect, and they definitely can make an effect on battle, because it's an extra ability that you can have for some people that does more damage, that just allows you to play in a very different way than you usually would. And that also is an advantage against the other team, because they aren't able to counter you, because they aren't able to know exactly how each player is going to play every round. So I think it's a really, really neat idea. He says it's really hard to capture how deeply unsatisfying every second of this game is. Whether it's using an ability, shooting a gun, or simply moving, it has an almost numbing effect, leaving me barely able to engage with its lackluster systems. I just want to go for a nap. As a sedative, Marvel Rivals is actually quite good, which is surprising given its obnoxious level of gaudiness. I I disagree with that because I think that the level of intenseness of each round is there because it's so fast. It's not one of those games where you're just going to be sitting at the back with a Widowmaker trying to grapple onto areas and trying to hit people and snipe people from behind. It's not going to be one of those games. It's going to be a game where you're going to have to move around pretty often and pretty quickly because the other team is moving around fast and quickly as well. Even the matches are pretty quick. They aren't super long matches. Sometimes Overwatch matches can go a little long. These matches seem to be just right, if maybe a little bit short sometimes. I think they can make them maybe a little bit longer if they wanted to. I think that that's kind of up to personal preference, though, on how you play your games and how much time you have. Because some people have a lot of time after they get home from work to kind of sit down and play into the evening. Some people only have an hour or two. So I think that this game is going to be really good for people that want to get a lot of content really, really quickly. When Marvel Rivals was revealed, some of the criticism was aimed at its Overwatch mimicry. Frankly, 8 being the biggest hero shooter around is probably a really good idea, but NetEasy has failed to actually capture what makes Overwatch work. Aside from a few heroes, it's predominantly a shooter. It has a clear visual language, and the big screen-obscuring abilities are events rather than simply part of the moment-to-moment action. Had Marvel Rivals leaned into the Overwatch similarities more, it might have been more salvageable. I disagree with this some, because I think this game is different than Overwatch and will feel very different than Overwatch when you play it. I think a big part of that is also the graphics, and a lot of the characters do not have guns. I don't really know what he means by calling it a shooter. Punisher's kind of your very cliche shooter archetype, but that's the game itself is not a shooter. It's definitely a hero shooter within that. As it stands, Marvel Rivals is a powerfully off-putting hero shooter that seems to offer little aside from the promise of letting you play with a decently varied gaggle of soups. And that is one thing I think that they are doing a really good job with. They have a lot of different characters, a lot that aren't super common, like Magic, Storm, a lot of X-Men characters, which I really enjoy because I personally prefer those to like the Avengers. X-Men's always been my favorite kind of universe within the Marvel side of it. But I think one thing that they're doing a really good job with is bringing in a lot of characters that a lot of comic book and a lot of Marvel die-hard fans are going to be very pleased with and very happy with. And I like that they're trying to gear this probably a little bit more towards that group and the pretty intense gamer group around that. And I think they really could knock it out of the park if they do it right. I think they need to bring in a couple more heroes before the next beta, which will be coming out at some point. We're not sure yet, but most likely this will be open beta a few months, maybe a couple months before the release date. And that's a time that we'll all be able to jump in together and be able to make our own opinions and our own reviews. But I really just wanted to go over this article because I didn't think that it was fair at all to the game and to the fans of Marvel and to gamers as well. Like I said, the game should be coming out at some point within the first or second quarter of 2025. I'll probably be doing a few more videos on this topic, just documenting any new news with it, any new characters, and kind of the status. The closed beta is available until August 5th, so hopefully you guys are enjoying that. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much. If you have made it to the end of the video, please consider giving the video a like, or if you disliked it, give it a dislike, and tell me your thoughts. Have you played the beta? Are you enjoying it? What characters do you enjoy? Do you think Magneto has been reduced to a shield guy, as this person is saying? Yeah. And hit the subscribe button if you want to be a part of any of the new videos that will be coming soon. I will be documenting Avowed, Dragon Age, Indiana Jones, all the new big games that are going to be coming at the end of this year, because we have a lot of them. It's going to be a fun end of the year. But thank you so much for stopping in and going over some of the Marvel Rivals news with me. Lots of new stuff coming up, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.